Well, welcome to the Hire Yourself podcast. Nat, good morning.
Hey, Pete, how's it going?
Oh, it is awesome, but I think it's probably more awesome for you. Did I hear that you have a new addition to your family?
You did. I am officially a dog person now. And
all right. So how did you get suckered into that? I've been warning you, right?
I know.
How did you get suckered into that?
I've been dodging that bullet for years and years and years. We have a like an 18-year-old cat. So we kind of, one leverage has been like, well, if we get a puppy, I'll probably put the cat in its grave, right? So we kind of I keep on kicking the can down the road. Finally, we're like, I don't think this cat's ever going to die. And then my youngest is in 8th grade, and all his buddies got puppies this last year. And so he just was, he wrote me a 2-page, kind of like Jerry Maguire, this is why I really need a dog. I'll take care of the dog, do all the work and train it, and on and on and on. So we had connected with a family that had a really nice German Shepherd. Yeah. And I asked them, like, hey, where'd you get your dog? And they shared with me the breeder. And we checked out with the breeder, and there was one puppy left. And so then I'm like,
you're locked there, right? Yeah.
I'm like, so then it starts to become, it was meant to be, it's like, because it's really hard to find a puppy right now. I think
absolutely, right? Yeah. Just all our friends have got puppies, right? Our dog passed last year, so and we've been toying with the idea, but it's like having a little kid. So your boys are they doing a good job of getting up and taking care of the dog, all that kind of good stuff?
Oh yeah, the second night I'm the one laying on the floor next to the crate on the wood floor, and I'm like, Pete was right. It's, the kids promise everything and then they underdeliver. They love it. It's worth it. And actually it's making me laugh and smile more than I have in a long time. When you take her for a walk, it's been super windy in Chicago, so the leaves are blowing around, and then she runs and captures the leaf, and it's hilarious. It just makes me laugh.
Well, dogs and cats, they bring us joy, right? And that's what it's all about. So Congratulations on that. So Well, today, Nat, I thought we'd talk a little bit about, I see a trend, and we're specifically going to talk about ownership of franchises, kind of the levels of engagement.
Yeah.
When people invest in franchises, there's different levels of engagement. So some people invest in franchises where they want to be the artisan. They want to do whatever the business is, right? They want to work in the business. They want to be the guy or gal spraying lawns or making sub sandwiches, right?
Yep.
And then we have the executive model, primarily where we work with executives, right? Where they've got some business acumen, they've got some capital, and they want to leverage that experience and capital in the business that gives them a good return. They'll always be involved, but they want to work on it, not in it. And they expect it to grow, right? And then we have within the executive model, you can choose to work in it full time. So 40, 50 hours a week, managing the manager, driving the marketing, that kind of stuff. Or where we see the trend is the executive model semi-absentee. Where you can keep that corporate job, you can start the business on the side, right? And the idea behind it is it takes a lot of work to get it going, but they start on the side. So the executive model semi-absentees, I thought we'd talk about that today. Sound good?
That's perfect. Yeah, let's do it.
All right. So I know you've owned them, right? Before you've had semi-absentee businesses where you could put 15 to 20 hours a week in it. But as we think about working with a lot of corporate executives or people that are just looking for that next thing, what do you think motivates people to want to do the executive model semi-absentee franchise ownership?
I like to joke about this concept of being ambitiously lazy. And so it's kind of that concept of being willing to work hard now so that I can work less hard / be lazy later. So I think that's kind of what people are looking for. And then the other thing too, retirement's tough. You start to look like, how much do I need in retirement to maintain my standard of living? Is it, $1 million? Is it $10 million? The numbers start to get, really huge, what you need in retirement to be able to live off your retirement income. So if you think about like, hey, if I could build a business over the next few years and generate, a 6-figure income, that is equivalent to having quite a bit of money stockpiled in your investment accounts. And it gives you purpose, something to do. And maybe it's something you can do for the next 20 years. And maybe it's something you can pass on to your family, like a legacy. So, I think that's kind of what people have in their head a little bit.
Okay, so a little bit what I heard you saying is about setting up your future, setting up your retirement. It's putting something in play. Okay, I hear that a lot. What about this idea that people look at it as to this creating a bridge, right? So I can keep my corporate income while I'm starting the business side. So it's just an easier way. I mean, you started a business from scratch, or you start something where you don't have an income. I've started a business where I don't have a corporate income on the side. So it's just sometimes an easier path to have that safety net of that corporate income while you're building the business. Do you see that a lot?
Yeah, I mean, if you're thinking about like an absentee owner franchise, I think that that's really hard, but I think semi-absentee franchise ownership is doable. You have to kind of get your ducks in a row and make sure it's a good fit and it's a franchise, that it's something that you're going to enjoy doing day to day, year to year. But yeah, I definitely see that.
Yeah, and I don't know if there's an absentee franchise. I mean, I truly believe semi-absentee. I mean, you
Right.
have to mind your business, right? You know this. You have to at least put 15, 20 hours a week watching over your business, because what
Yes.
you don't mind doesn't go so well. So we have to mind our business. One of the other things that people tell me is that, hey, listen, I want to diversify my assets and my income, right? I want to
Totally.
take some money out of the stock market. I'd like to have multiple income sources and stuff like that. Do you see that much?
100%. I mean, when you think about it, like people are, we've always been taught about diversifying your portfolio, right? So I think that means more than just index funds and mutual funds and stocks, because that's all in the stock market. I think it's pretty genius to have a business because that can generate money, kind of like what we were talking about. If you have a business that generates $100,000 net profit, that's worth a lot of money that would be invested to generate that. So I see people definitely doing that, and just diversifying is, that concept is always going to be a good concept.
Yeah, I think the other thing too, and I use the term when I present, like do webinars, this idea of creating career and income security.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So if you have your own business, nobody can walk in and say, hey, we're downsizing, we're going a different direction, we've just been acquired. You're in control. So if you have this business, you've kind of protected yourself.
100%. And you get to build the team, right? It's like there's not a lot of politics, because it's a very, typically a fairly flat organization, right? You get to make the decisions. You get to live or die by those decisions. So when you're talking about like a semi-absentee franchise ownership, I mean, I think it's kind of the best of both worlds, because you also have a lot of structure in place with the parent company. You think about Orange Theory or, Sports Clips or some of these Jimmy John's. I actually just ordered Jimmy John's yesterday. And, how genius, you can just go on and, they have all the technology set up and you
Yep.
order and they deliver. So there's a lot of infrastructure, and it does kind of create that bridge, because most people aren't, let's be realistic, most people aren't going to start something from scratch. Those are kind of like, those are moonshots. And the ones that do end up kind of being like Jimmy John's, that's overnight success that started 40 plus years ago, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Right.
So I think it is a good bridge to entrepreneurship.
And let me guess, the owner of the Jimmy John's didn't deliver the sandwich to you, or make the sandwich,
No,
most likely?
I think the strategy is to have the lowest hourly wage person deliver it to increase profitability, which is, I think, the right approach, right?
Well, that's how we build wealth, is leveraging other people's time, for sure.
Exactly.
I always use the term jobs are no longer income security. I think you have a better term. You say, when we have a job, we're just renting our income, right?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the new security is really having your own business, because again, nobody can fire you, nobody can furlough you. You're going to be the last person standing. If it's your business, you're the last one to go.
Yeah,
absolutely. So
most of the guys that we work with, because they've been successful in corporate, they've been successful building teams, they've been successful managing P&Ls. I mean, it seems like they do very well in the franchise world. It's just kind of, it's like that gut check when you go to tell your wife, hey, honey, this is what I'm going to do. So it's like you have to, I think it's that leap of faith that is really what stands in the way for most of these guys.
Oh, sure. I mean, you're taking your time and your capital, right? And you got to get a return for it, right? So if you have a corporate position and you got the side business, you're investing some of your capital and some of your time, and you got to get a big enough return off that.
Exactly.
Because there's trade-offs, right? There's less time to do other things if you got the side business.
Totally.
So, when we talk about this, you keep your corporate job, you start this business on the side, and the idea behind it is it takes a lot of work to get a business off the ground, right? So even though it's executive model semi-absentee, it takes a lot of work to get it off the ground. And I use the example of like a plane, right? If you're going to take a trip, formerly known as travel, pleasure travel, right? You get in the plane, it's filled with bags underneath, luggage, and then all the people in it. And it takes a lot of power to get that plane off the ground. And then when it gets to a certain altitude, I'm told they actually pull back the power. And I think that's the same thing with any business, is it takes a lot of power and energy to get it off the ground. Would you agree?
Totally. I think most guys are actually super energized by that, though, because it's kind of like, a lot of times at your corporate job, you can kind of hit a plateau and, everything's kind of predictable, or else you're either that or else you're just waiting for the other shoe to drop. So when you have, you're like, I'm going to go, let's find the right real estate. Let's negotiate this lease or negotiate this lease. It's like kind of energizing because it's doing something new, learning something new, meeting new people. And it's, most people love it. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it is a lot of hard work, but if you've been kind of a corporate executive doing the same thing for 25 years, it is, to your point, a new challenge. And, people say, I just want to be engaged. I want to be doing something different. I want to make an impact in my community. And in a local business, it allows people to do that. Yeah.
And let's be honest, Pete, if, compared to how hard you worked at Ford, running a franchise would be like, I don't know, being on vacation or something. I don't even.
Yeah, absolutely.
You guys are crazy. You guys were crazy at Ford. That's all I know.
Well, that Ford versus Ferrari, there's nothing right with that culture that they demonstrated there. But anyways, so we know it takes a lot of time and effort to get it off the ground. And then the idea is that if you're not there, you got to have an operating manager.
Yeah,
you got to have somebody, and that's really important, right? Picking the right one. What's your experience on picking that right operating manager? If you're not there, you got to have the right person. So, what are your thoughts on that?
I think there's a couple approaches. I've actually been super. It's worked out really well for me. Kind of actually implementing a book called Traction, and that strategy is actually more having a daily check-in call with all your team. So what I was able to do with that is I'm able to almost like still give direction and be the manager, but it's only taken me a little bit, like 10, 15 minute chunks of time once a day. I think it's always a good strategy to hire A players. So one mistake that I've made in the past is I've kind of like, I need to I basically went cheap on a manager, and that has blown up in my face every single time. So my thought process was, I can only really afford, kind of this level, like a C player manager.
Yeah.
And then, I'll tell you what is expensive is hiring a C level manager and then training them and then them basically messing up your business and then having to basically fire them and start over. So my advice would be hire the A level person. It's going to be a little bit more expensive, but it's going to take a lot off your plate as the owner. And it really kind of evens out the business.
And sometimes, even if you're hiring A players, you might have to go through a couple people to find the right match, and that's what it works. Yeah. But that'll make or break you, right? Having the right manager, because if you're only checking in with the business half an hour each day, you're a corporate executive, you're driving into your corporate position, and you do your check-in. That manager is the face of the business from a standpoint.
I think most franchises have a pretty good hiring profile at this point of who that good manager is, and also at what revenue to hire those people. And then also like your other franchise owners are going to be pretty dialed in, and you can pick their brain, kind of like what, who did you find worked the best in this situation or at this role? And so I think that helps a lot.
And some people actually give their managers, kind of their lead managers, some kind of incentive to be an owner, right? Kind of a,
I have a buddy that owns a bunch of Culvers, and it's a pretty cool story. Like he started about 15 years ago, and his general manager like kind of vested over time, and then they opened up a second store, and that general manager then went over and ran that store and had, partial equity. So there's definitely kind of that strategy of kind of lifting your employees up by giving them more opportunities as they kind of step up and prove themselves. I think that that's probably one of the best ways, and least risky to kind of, get those manager run locations, is kind of find somebody that's willing to kind of start more entry level and work their way up, and then that's hungry and really takes responsibility. So interesting story, where I live, there's Jimmy John's, and they own about 30 locations, and their managers, from what I understand, make a very healthy income. I've heard third hand, like even six figures, but I heard the manager was telling me he had an employee that wasn't able to get to work. And so the Jimmy John's manager actually paid out of his own pocket. Like he paid out of his own pocket to have this guy with the employee's card towed and fixed. So he handled all that. It never went to the owner's level. The manager, who's being well paid, took care of all of that. So that's what's possible, right? Is you can get these managers that are hungry, well paid, and they're really, know how to build a team themselves.
All right, so we can have a great manager and A player, but we still need to mind our business, right? So, so kind of I think the guideline is 15 or 20 hours a week. How you do that before, after, weekends, but bottom line is you got to be watching over it. And some people, last time, if you're really efficient, it sounds like you using traction, maybe you're less, right, than that. And others, if you're poor at time management, or if you're poor at delegating, leading, well, then it could be more than 20 hours, right? I mean, it really kind of comes on to your style and your skill set.
What's that saying about what you have to do always expands to the amount of time that you allow for it? So like if you tell yourself you have to do it in 5 hours, you probably figure it out. If you tell yourself 15 hours, your to-dos will expand. I try to keep my hands in anything that has to do with the money. So payroll, invoicing, things like that. And then with franchising, it's so automated at this point, it's clicking a few buttons. It's not like you're sitting there with your bifocals on trying to go through a spreadsheet or something. It's just click, 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 and it's pretty easy.
Yeah. And I think as you think about the executive model opportunity, right, keep your corporate job, a big part of doing your due diligence of looking at a franchise is actually validating that system can be semi-absentee, right? So a franchise may say, hey, listen, we'll allow you to be semi-absentee. That's different than actually they've got the ability to validate that they have franchisees operating in the executive model semi-absentee.
100%. Yeah. And like the Molly Mate guy that we were talking to on a podcast a few weeks ago, I mean, I love that guy. He's got 10, 15, 20 cars and his 5 or 10 hours a week, he likes to go, check the tire pressures and, make sure the cars are in good working order. So it's perfect example of semi-absentee franchise ownership, where he's doing the part that he enjoys. He's got managers and family that's running the business. So he's kind of building that family, business / legacy. It kind of, checks all the boxes,
Yeah, no, that's awesome. So, as we think about it, more and more people are looking to create that side gig, and franchising through semi-absentee ownership may be the path. And so there is a lot of great things with it, and it's still a heck of a lot of hard work. You still need to lead the business, right? You have to manage the controllables, but it's a nice option for people in today's world.
Yeah. Sign me up, Pete. I'll take a couple more.
Right.
I'll take a couple more of those semi-absentee franchises.
We can see what we can find for you. All right, okay. Nat, it has been a pleasure today. Have a great week.
Thanks for listening to the Hire Yourself podcast. For more resources, check out our website at hireyourself.com. And remember to subscribe to this podcast to receive each episode. Please leave us a rating, and we'd love to hear your feedback or suggestions for topics.